My full name is Mary Burnett. I was born in 1947 in Fergus, Ontario. And we moved to Rossport in 1975, the day the Edmund Fitzgerald went down. My grandparents were all born in Canada, as I think were their parents. I'm about fifth generation. Raj and I met on the Canadian, the train, in 1973, I think, and he moved in January '74 and never left. It was Christmas. We were both going to Elora for Christmas. I still am a full-time probation officer. That's my job, and we've had the restaurant, Roger and I, since 1988. Kathy Giroux has been with us all that time as well, and we're a triumvirate. Tripod, just like your camera is sitting on. The three of us basically run the place. The Serendipity Gardens has been open now for 26 years, and the three of us are still having far too much fun. Roger built, my husband Roger built a 4-unit guest house in 2001. It's based on a Gothic art shape. He's had it in his head for years and years and years and years that he wanted to build it. And his mom always said, when I go, if there's any money left, you better build that building. So we did. He said, what should I do with the money, Mary? I said, Roger, it's your money. So we now have a 4-unit guest house, which has been immensely popular. Lots of people say that the Serendipity is the best little outfit between Thunder Bay and Sault Ste. Marie, and we're really happy to hear that. Oh, my favorite memories of Rossport. My goodness, that's really an interesting question. Probably putting in the water line. What a community effort that was. That was great. Fish derbies were fun, but it's been 20 years since those happened, and one can't expect too much of volunteers in a small community, and that's exactly what that was. And it got too expensive because we had to hire a PP to be security, and we just didn't make any money at Fish Derby. So, thing of the past, like your history project is talking about. Yeah, it had been a really, really, really big thing, and when Toy Cephala ran it, like huge, and then it disappeared for a while. And when we first moved here, Cy Brassard, I think, just started it up, and him and a few other people, Kathy Giroux, can't remember who else, but they started it up again, and it really was, pretty cool. But it never was like it. I don't think I never knew what it was like before. But it was a neat little effort for a small community, for sure. I didn't grow up here. I grew up in southern Ontario. So the fun things I did as a child, growing up on a farm, were mostly just playing outside, and my two sisters and I, we used to go sliding on the hills in the wintertime, and summertime, there was always a garden. I learned to garden really, really young, and as I got older, there was 4-H clubs, garden clubs, entertaining clubs. I guess that's where I got some of the stuff, ideas, for the restaurant. Plus, I worked in Niagara on the Lake at a really upscale restaurant, and the same thing in Elora. There was, where I grew up, was a very upscale touristy little community. So trying to do in Rossport sort of what I grew up with as a tourism attraction. And I think that Rossport's accepted this really, really well. But it's always been a tourism town. The hotel has been here forever, and people used to come from all over the states, in particular to the Rossport Inn when the Cephalas had, as I understand it. I mean, I wasn't living here then. But I moved to Thunder Bay in 1970 to teach. And I'm back working with the same kids that I started out my career with, working with youth probation, which is, as you, I think I mentioned, is my job. I've volunteered lots over the years. First in Rossport, Kathy and I, Kathy Drew and I started a youth club, and actually that's how I got into probation work, was as a result of the youth club. Some of the kids had gotten involved with the courts, and I went to an annual meeting, and if you go to an annual meeting anywhere in small communities, you're immediately on the board. And when the position came open a few years later, I was encouraged to apply for it because I had a degree, and that's how I got into probation work in 1984. And I've been involved in lots of Rossport volunteering, you know, Historical Society, Rec Committee. Regionally, I was part of a group called Project Mayday, which my friend and your colleague Donna Michaelak was involved in. It was a women's group, a feminist group that was all along the North Shore. We did participatory research with a really interesting take on how women perceive their lives in Northern Ontario. I think I've been involved with Northern Development Councils, which was a political lobbying group with all the people from all over the Northwest that the then Northern Development Minister enlisted to give feedback back to the government about Northern policies. And I've been involved in Lake Superior Binational Forum, which was a stakeholders group of people from all around Lake Superior. Again, an interest group to get feedback back to various governments about the state of the lake. And since Kathy decided to have kids about 17, 18 years ago, haven't done a lot of volunteering, just a little bit of Historical Society, pretty much focused more on can only spread yourself so thin. And the job in the restaurant have been the focus mostly the last few years. Oh, we've always had fabulous staff here at the restaurant. You know, Kathy and Roger, it's the stability, you know, Mary Clutte's been here for like 20 years, Karina for more than that, just trying to think. Jess Hodder, who worked for us way back in the late early 90s, is back as a cook. You know, continuity for sure. Social media has made things a lot more immediate, I think. You know, that's probably the biggest change. Everything is right out there these days. You have to be very, very careful if you don't want to get yourself into a corner. I think social media is something that people are still learning how to handle. Having worked with kids in the 1970s and working with kids again now, they're still doing the same goofy things that kids have to do because that's what you do as a teenager. You've got to learn somehow. And the only way people learn is by doing. And so everybody's got to go through all that stuff to hopefully become a responsible adult. Worked with some guys who were 30 before they became responsible adults, or 50, but hey, probation work is interesting, never dull. I garden. Calling myself Serendipity Gardens enabled me to pursue my hobby and spend money on it. And other than that, I read. Voracious reader, and so I'm really happy that the library is doing this kind of gesture towards keeping history alive. My degree's in history, which I've never used. I'm taught phys ed. I never used my history degree. I have a history and phys ed degree. It's cool. Nice little project. Well, when we first moved here, that big storm that I was talking about when I moved this girl went down our backdoor neighbor when we moved here was the lighthouse keeper at that point. His name was Bill Hewlett, and I guess the waves were so high out at the lighthouse that he was up at the top opening the door to go into the upper part, and a wave came up and slammed the door on his fingers and took 2 fingers. Isn't that amazing? That huge lighthouse. Can you imagine waves that high? Just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, that's pretty cool. And Rossport's always been a village of characters, I think. I remember Roger was putting in posts to add to the front part of the building here because it's ended here. And Bill's wife, Josephine, came down from here to go across the street to go to the mail. And she said, "What are you doing? You digging a hole? Like you put me in there and I can feet head first and I still be kicking." She was a hoot. Oh God, Josephine. Lots of people. And Ronnie next door, oh my God, he's dead now. So is Josephine, so is Bill. But he disappeared into that house and he'd never come out until he went back to work the next day. But if you caught him in the grocery store, you couldn't get away from him. But he wouldn't answer the door, he wouldn't answer his phone. 2 doors over, not next door. Yeah. Yeah. It's, just unusual people. I think maybe a small village is more prone to attract characters. We moved in with Mac Hewlett when we left the Rossport Inn for a month till we could find somewhere to live in Rossport. We were lucky to be able to. It's really, really difficult, even back then, 38 years ago, to find a place to live. And Mac had the liquor agency as well, a sort of little convenience store. And we were in the very back. He had added on cabins to the back of each of the original building as he got cabins from somewhere. And the one at the very back was freaking cold in December, I'll tell you. But every night at supper you'd sit down and he'd have a shot of rye and you'd have to go like this, shoot it back, and die rowish, go with the sun. Ukrainian custom. I don't really know much about Ukrainian life, but that was it. And at least 1 dive roge and maybe 2 and sometimes 3. You'd be hungry. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh gosh, that's too funny. People that you think about that, when you're at the Rossport Inn. Lorraine Sepulveda. You're back on again, are you? Yeah, Lorraine Sepulveda, who lived there all her life, swore there were not ghosts at the Rossport Inn. And I certainly never saw a ghost, but I sure didn't go off into that area over top of where the bar used to be at nighttime. They called it the Irish Suite. And no, not going down that passage to the Irish Suite at nighttime, not this kid. The Rossport Inn's a really neat little place. It's got lots of history. And the whole community has a lot of history. It was the First Nations meeting place in the summertime for tribes from all over. I guess they called it Bawagasheen. I can't remember what it means. It means shallow water meeting place, I think. And Hilda Musquatch, who used to live here, and then she and Dave moved to Pays Plat when he retired from the highways. And gave Rod a lot of that kind of history. I think she was the historian for the Pays Plat band as well. That was sort of her role as a. I told Roger lots of First Nation stuff. No, Rossport was named after the guy who was in charge, I guess the engineer who was in charge of putting the railway through this part of the country. Somebody or other, Ross. And that's how the community was named after him. The hotel was built as a railroad hotel. I think it was called the Oriental Hotel first off. There was an old poster that we found in the Rossport Inn when we were there that said something about the Oriental Hotel. Weird, I don't know why they call it that, yeah. But it was part of the CP hotels that, like there's still some CP hotels in Banffs, Springs is a CP hotel. There was one in Nipigon at one time, I believe. Interesting. Yeah, the railway certainly, I think, is Canada's link across the country, and you're right on it. You can hear it every day. When you're at the Rossport Inn, oh God, yeah, when Raj and I first moved here, we came to run the Rossport Inn for the then 14 owners, which is another story entirely. But we moved into the bedroom at the front because it had a closet. And the first night, we pulled up right in bed, 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh, we're gonna die! We're gonna die right through the window at us. Needless to say, we moved to the back bedroom where you could hear the little creek running down the next night. And that was cool because the cats could get in and out the window because they could hop onto the kitchen roof and then up into into the bedroom, and then and not get downstairs. So they had access to the upper part. Yeah, it was a fun place to live. Rossport's a really neat community. Really enjoy living here. It's really fun. It's very friendly, and you know, people may know everybody's business, but they don't talk about it. Like, we lived in another northern community between here and Thunder Bay, and if people would start a rumor, and it would go around the whole community, and but they'd make sure it got back to you, and that was a very fun place to live. Rossport's a lot nicer. Yeah, I certainly enjoy living here. I think being a community that has been able to give a lot of incentive to Schreiber and Terrace Bay with the harder economic times, that tourism can and is a viable option, that if you do tourism right, that you can attract people to stop in your communities. So we've got a whole market that we didn't know we had until we built the guest house, because there are people traveling across the country. They're going to see Grandma in Victoria, they're going to see the kids in Fort McMurray. They do the trip once a year, every 2 years, and they said, oh, we're stopping in here for lunch for years, but now that you've got accommodation, we're getting to know you. And that was a market that we had, and you can't target that kind of market, you know, it's just people find you, and word of mouth, that's your best form of advertising for sure. And I think tourism is something that the North Shore needs to put as much effort as they can into. You know, I know that Terrace Bay has a lot bigger tax base than Schreiber has, and it's enabled them to revamp their downtown core with the work they've done there is fabulous. Terrace Bay looks really cool. And hopefully somebody will realize that Schreiber doesn't have a tax base, and put a little more government money into Schreiber someday, because you know, CP doesn't pay taxes. That's the long and the short story about, you know, what makes the community go around.